Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate here in the office of the Prime Minister. This Thursday, the 6th of March, day 517 of the October 7th war. I'll be providing a really quick update and then we'll take your questions. Please remember to put them in the chat together with your news outlet and we'll take all of them. Remember to put your name and your news outlet and we take your questions. Let me start today with laying out Israel's position on the Witkoff framework. Israel's stance is well defined. The goals of the war, the return of all the hostages, the elimination of the military and governmental capabilities of the Hamas terrorist organization, and the removal of the terrorist threat to our citizens. Israel cannot accept a situation in which Hamas continues the ceasefire under the initial conditions without the release of our hostages. Just a reminder, our hostages remain in starvation conditions. Yesterday, Dr. Hagar Mizrahi, head of Israel's Ministry of Health's medical division, said that the hostages who returned to Israel in phase 1 suffered from extreme weight loss, up to 40% of their body weight, leading to severe nutritional deficiencies. Barely 50% of the necessary daily intake of food was given to preserve life. They suffered from muscle bleeding. Physiotherapy was needed to rebuild their muscles. They suffered from infectious diseases, from the zero hygiene. They were forced to drink dirty water, while clean water is and was available. Eye and dental problems. They suffered from broken teeth. But also, a point very often not made is for the hostage families themselves. The stress and the mental strain even affecting their own dental health and general well-being. Israel's health ministry has again called on the Red Cross to get proper nutrition and full meals and vitamin supplements to the remaining hostages. If Hamas continues to refuse to let our people go, Israel will be compelled to respond accordingly. Now, Israel has accepted Witkoff's proposals to extend the temporary ceasefire through Ramadan and Passover, provided that Hamas releases hostages. Hamas has rejected this offer. To be clear again, we will not return to the reality that preceded the murderous terrorist attacks on October 7th, 2023. The Witkoff framework, to spell it out again, states a temporary ceasefire will be in place during Ramadan and Passover period. On the first day of the framework, half of the living and deceased hostages will be released, and at the end of the period, it's an agreement. If an agreement is reached on a permanent ceasefire, all remaining hostages will be released. Next, let me deal with the issue of aid to Gaza. Aid that goes to Hamas is not humanitarian aid. Hamas has refused to accept the Witkoff framework. Israel has agreed. Israel has halted the entry of supplies into Gaza. Now, these are the facts. There are currently sufficient amounts of aid and food and supplies in Gaza. Hamas harms Gazans. I'll tell you how. It systematically steals the aid. It turns it into a funding stream for terror, to pay for more terrorists, to create more rockets. This is what Hamas do. I'll walk you through it. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs released an excellent video about this just yesterday. I recommend you have a look at it. They, number one, steal the aid. Number two, they sell it back at vastly inflated prices. They use that money to rearm, and then their final of this four-part plan of Hamas is to attack. Again, they steal, they sell, they rearm, and they attack. They steal, they sell, they rearm, and they attack. Let me give you the facts again. During this 42-day phase 1, 25,000 aid trucks entered Gaza. 25,000 aid trucks entered Gaza, which means there is no shortage of food in the Strip whatsoever. The only humanitarian suffering in reality in Gaza is that of Israeli hostages who are being chained, who are being starved, and who are being held in Hamas tunnels. Hamas are taking the aid that enters Gaza and exploiting it to rebuild their war machine. The aid trucks have become an economic engine for Hamas. Half of Hamas's budget in Gaza comes from these trucks. Just a reminder that former US President Biden very clearly stated this on October the 18th, 2023. He said, these are his words, "If Hamas diverts or steals the aid, it will stop." President Biden said, "If Hamas diverts or steals the aid, it will stop." Aid that goes to Hamas is not humanitarian. It is support for the enemy, enabling the enemy to resupply itself so it can regroup and reattack is not humanitarian. To be blunt, it's suicidal. And after October 7th, we will not let that be again. That's the end of our briefing here today. So again, please put your questions in the chat together with your news outlet and we'll take some of your questions. Okay, first question here from Alexander Cornwell from Reuters. Before the most recent restrictions on goods entering Gaza, had Israel placed any restrictions on equipment for mine clearing and unexploded ordnance clearing? If so, when and for what purpose? Thank you for that question, Alex. Can I put you directly through to the IDF, who will be able to answer that question, or to COGAT on that specific? I haven't got any information on that. Next question is from Lizzie Porter at the National in the UAE. You're asking that the Prime Minister's office has expressed to the United States its position regarding direct talks with Hamas per a statement last night. Can you describe what this position is and when and how Israel was kept in the loop about these talks? Per Israel's understanding, did the US-Hamas talks in any concrete way impact the way the ceasefire and the hostage release process has so far been carried out? Thank you, from Lizzie Porter at the National. Thank you for that question, Lizzie. Let me, as you're right to say, actually, we have expressed to the US our position regarding direct talks with Hamas. Yesterday, the president tweeted on Truth Social and on Twitter as well, X, that Hamas must release our hostages immediately, without delay, right now. Hamas should be be in no doubt whatsoever that they are running out of road. Indeed, they have run out of road. The president has made clear that they need to release the hostages right now. Next question from David Clement. If Hamas won't accept the Witkoff framework, is there a timeline for when the IDF will engage? Thank you for that question, David. Let me put it this way. You won't be surprised if I don't share the government's timeline, but be in no doubt, this agreement, previously agreed by all the parties, has made crystal clear. Again, this agreement agreed with the previous administration and with this administration, has made clear that the 59 hostages currently remaining captive in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, living and deceased, we've got a duty to bring them home. We have a moral and ethical obligation to do everything in our power to get our hostages out, to every single last one of them. And Israel reserves the right to return to attacking Hamas. Israel, as part of the agreement, reserves the right to return to attacking Hamas. As you know, our war aims are clear. At the end of this war, there is no scenario where Hamas will remain in power either military power or any part of any sort of governing structure. It is a key part of our war aims, together with bringing out our hostages, together with ensuring that Gaza can no longer be a threat to this country. Okay, another question here from Hannah Julian, asking the same question about that I've already answered. John Huddy from Newsmax. President Trump posted, as he called it, a last warning to Hamas to release the hostages, otherwise they'll be held to pay. What is your reaction to this message, and what do you think he means when he says hell to pay? Thank you for that question, John. Look, the Prime Minister has made clear that we've never had a friend like President Trump in the White House. We are shoulder to shoulder, we are side by side. There is no daylight between Washington, D.C. and Jerusalem, none whatsoever. Hamas should be under no illusion of what that means. If you want to ask what President Trump means, then you should ask President Trump. But from our point of view, the President has made clear in these comments in the last 24 hours that our hostages need to be returned, and also that this region needs some out-of-the-box thinking. Simply repeating the same failed policies will get us no closer to a resolution. So we, from Israel's point of view, very much welcome President Trump's out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to the future of Gaza. But no one should be in any doubt of the closeness of the relationship between our two countries. It is based on shared values and also understanding that Hamas is an evil, genocidal death cult. They love death, they aspire to death, whereas the Judeo-Christian culture is, of course, to love life and to preserve life. They are aiming for death, which means that this country cannot live side by side by this genocidal, murderous organization. Okay, Christiana Ludwig from Christiana Ludwig, could you give us your SZ? Perhaps you could tell us what SZ is. Forgive my ignorance, Christiana. Jason Perry from NTD News. What's Israel's plan when food becomes scarce in Gaza? What will be the incentive for residents to leave? Will that be an incentive to residents to leave if they wanted to? Is there any plan for any other country to take them in? Thank you for that question. Jason Perry from NTD News. Look, throughout this war, we have been prepared to make painful sacrifices in the pursuit of a change of the status quo. But let's be clear, the arming and equipping of those who seek our extermination, because be clear that aid to Gaza right now means aid to Hamas, okay? They steal the aid, they resell the aid to their own people, and then they rearm, and then they want to attack. They steal, they resell, they rearm, and then they want to attack. Steal, sell, rearm, and attack. That's their plan. No country would accept rearming its enemy, especially an enemy like Hamas, who is determined to, and they say it with their own mouth, to carry out October the 7th again and again and again. So we're not signing up for our extermination. And Hamas, who use these supplies to torture their own people, look, it's a step too far. No one has the moral right to demand that we, Israel, re-equip rapists and serial killers so that they might kill and rape some more. I mean, who would even ask such a thing? Shame on anyone that even suggests it. The sworn goal of Hamas is to kill every Jew on earth. You want us to pay for their gas, for their pickup trucks, and then we should make them sandwiches at the same time? You know, you're leaning on the wrong people. The world should lean on Hamas. If Hamas suddenly have an interest in being humanitarians, why don't they start a little closer to home? Why are there no calls for them to release the hostages? Why don't they stop teaching their own children to blow themselves up as suicide bombers? Why don't they stop calling to exterminate the Jews? None of that seems very humanitarian to me. And if you're interested in humanitarian issues, then why aren't you, in your media, calling for Hamas to do all of the above? Or is it that because Jews are not entitled to the same humanitarian protection and dignity that you claim is a universal right for others? Hamas have hoarded for months and months of supplies. They have enough food to feed their own people and to cause their own Hamas terrorists to create an obesity epidemic. But the only people who we see getting fat are Hamas themselves. Jason, I don't know if you've seen the grisly footage of the release ceremonies that have and just how well fed Hamas are. The supplies are there, but Hamas simply don't share. Would you ask us to give matches to arsonists? Well, until something changes with Hamas, we're not going to give them the equipment that allows them to set the region on fire again. If the criminals of Gaza won't reach out their hand to release our people in peace, then they can stop reaching out their hand to take. If they have the money for rockets and bombs and guns, then they have the money to look after themselves. Remember this point. Not only have the goods sent into Gaza been turned into weapons of war, it has freed Hamas to focus on terrorism rather than fulfill the basic responsibility they have to look after their own people. If there is to be any hope in this region, then the world must stop giving Hamas a helping hand. That is what they want. Anyone who wants to end this war will support these timely measures. Say it again, and we say it again. We give aid, and then we're betrayed. We give aid, and then they throw a grenade. And when they say supplies, it's just lies. There has been no free meal for those who aim to kill our people, to murder our hostages. Release the hostages now. Release our hostages now, and you'll be able to leave Gaza alive. There is no scenario whereby Gaza will be run in any way, shape or form by Hamas. Okay, I'll take one more question here from CBS News. Why has Israel changed the terms of the deal agreed to in January that Phase 2 would negotiate to an end to the war with a withdrawal of troops from Gaza and a return to return of all the living hostages? Thank you for that question. Look, we have agreed the framework for the US presidential envoy in order to return our hostages. The Hamas terror organization, which has repeatedly violated the agreements, is persistent in its refusal. So we've accepted, Hamas have refused. If you think, CBS, that Israel is about to throw open the border of Gaza with Egypt so that Hamas can rearm itself with rockets and weapons and cash to wage war on us again, as they say we will do. When they say it, we believe it because they mean it. Then you obviously don't understand anything about preserving life in this region. If Hamas changes its position, Israel will enter into negotiations immediately. The Witkoff framework is extremely clear. A temporary ceasefire will be in place during Ramadan and Passover period. On the first day of the suggested framework, half of the living and the deceased hostages will be released. At the end of the period, if an agreement is reached on a permanent ceasefire, and all the remaining hostages will be released. That is very, very clear. That is the Witkoff framework. That is the only show in town right now. Now, the state of Israel reserves the option to return to intense fighting. It's not what we want. But also, according to this current framework, if the negotiations are not effective, this clause has been supported by both the previous US administration and the current one. Hamas need to return the hostages. Let my people go now. Okay, my friends, that looks like the last question. Thank you for joining us here today. Christiana, I think I did answer your question from Süddeutsche Zeitung. I think I answered your question directly. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll have another briefing again shortly. We're available for interview or for any questions. We'll be happy to help if we can. And in the meantime, please do stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.